Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Fabric Developer. I've got some really exciting news to share today. As we've talked about before, MJ was one of the first people to actually undertake the DP-700 exam, and he's actually passed it as well. And I've followed through that process. I've also passed, so both of us are now DP-700 certified. Congrats!
Yes.
Yay!
Hey. Yeah, it's very I would say exciting journey, right? Because especially for me, like I told in the other video, right? Like I'm the person who didn't come from Power BI land. That's why when I took the DP-600, that feels a bit off for me, right? Like because yeah, Fabric is more than just Power BI, DAX, XML, and all those things. Because again, I'm looking at Fabric in the beginning, coming from Spark or Synapse or Databricks point of view, right? And I was really, really happy with the way they've structured the exam. But at the same time, it's still a bit tricky, right? Like some of the exam questions are really, really tricky. Like without spilling actual questions and answers here, right? Like one of the confusing scenarios for me in the exam was choosing what streaming options to choose from, right? Because there's so many streaming options in Fabric. Like there's structured streaming in Spark, there's event stream, and then there so many options. Like implementing CDC and all those things. Um yeah, so how about you? Like Dave, like what was the experience for you with the exam?
Well, I think it's good. It's good. I think just not just the DP-700 exam itself, but the learning process, the Microsoft Learn has improved so much over the past 2 years. It's like that plus the labs. I think regardless of whether I pass DP-700 or not, I think that learning has been quite interesting. You and I have been talking about Fabric and
Mm.
producing contents for quite a long time as well. But sometimes when we actually like when I actually do the learning thing, just going through Microsoft Learn, there's still a lot of things I'm picking up on. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
this. Oh, that's interesting. Um, and so that's been quite good. It's a little bit stressful when I try to do it in a pretty short notice in a way. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been good. I was sitting in Sydney. I was actually going to a test center,
Oh, you went to a
and
test center, yeah?
yeah, yeah, and the experience there is they actually got my name wrong.
Ah,
It was so random. Oh, actually, about names. So now I just realized because I was using David Ding, but my real name is E Ding in the passport. So and that they've been okay previously, but now they're really locking it down. It's like
oh,
okay, it has
yes.
to be the same. So I actually have to go through a process to update my Learn profile legal name before I actually take the exam. So I did that. I went to the exam, and then the guy actually got me as a different person. And when I sit into the exam, it's not Fabric, it's not Microsoft, it's some kind of Cisco stuff. And I just sat there and I just put my hands up straight away. Like, this is not me. Yeah, but anyway, like 10 minutes later, they get everything sorted. So I'm able to actually sit for the exam.
Yeah, in-person training, in-person exam is actually really nice because it kind of like face you mentally, right? That hey, you're in this environment and like nothing else matters, and and like you kind of like need to physically prepare as well, and like it's just like how we do exams in back in school, right? Like
Yeah.
you set up yourself to do the exam and nothing else, right?
Yeah, yeah. Have to take the watch off. I've got
Yeah.
smart like everything. Can't take anything. Can't even have water, like a bottle of water in the exam room. You can only use their a plastic cup as well. But I do prefer the test center approach because I don't need to worry about anything. I just need to make sure I turn up on time with my ID, my passport, and then I don't have to worry about anything else. So I do prefer that. The exam itself, it covers everything obviously, but also there are some tricky things around. Like I didn't expect they're gonna ask. I think I've got like two or three questions on DAG, so directed
Oh, yes.
acyclic graphs, and I was like, gee, I've got no idea. But the good thing is
That's
Microsoft
Microsoft Learn.
Learn
Yeah,
is
you can.
actually available, so you can actually look it up. I think as part of the exam preparation, it's actually good to kind of familiar yourself with the structure of Microsoft Learn. So when you get a question, you kind of know where to look for, like how to look for answers. Like it doesn't have, I don't think it's got everything.
No.
A certain part that actually been excluded, but you can still get a lot of information from Microsoft Learn. So it kind of felt a
Yes,
little bit like open book.
exactly. Especially for some of those step-by-step parts, like usually that's in Learn, and obviously there's also a concept of consequences for it, like, hey, you're not there to actually read the Microsoft Learn document, right? Otherwise, you might end up spending 20 minutes for one question, right? And I fell
Yeah,
into that trap sometimes, right? Like because
yeah.
oh yeah, I don't know this, and I'm curious, and like I want to really know the answer, and I overspend time with Learn, because what I've noticed is that before when there was no Learn, like I have no choice, right? Like if I don't know
Yeah,
the answer, I'll just take a guess.
yeah.
But now there's Learn, so sometimes there's that part of you where you're like, you're not sure, so let me check
Mm.
Learn, and then you end up
Like spending
going to
10
the
minutes
rabbit
on
hole.
one question. Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point. Like so what I do is I will um like try not to use Learn in the first go. I will just mark things
Yeah,
that need review. And
that's
then
a good
that's
one.
when so I'll complete the first part because there's three parts, I think, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
complete the first part and then go into review, but still need to be conscious of time because there's like two more parts after
Yeah.
that as well.
I
So
was rushing on the last part. Yeah.
yeah, it's very easy to get into that thing as well. So I think time management is obviously quite critical. Yeah.
Yeah, because how long is the exam? Like an hour and a half or something?
Is it? Yeah. I thought it was maybe 1 hour 40 minutes actually.
Yeah, so,
Actually.
something like that, right? Like, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
around 60 questions or 65, right?
yeah. Right
So
about that.
basically, you shouldn't spend more than 3 minutes per question, right? Like that's like a general advice there. Like a question, you should be able to answer it within 2 minutes,
Mm,
right? And then if it's a simple question, you should be able to answer it within a minute, right?
yeah,
That's why there's that pressure on your end that you really need. Again, you're there to take the exam. You're not there to look at Microsoft Learn and like Google,
yeah,
Google things around.
yeah. Sure. And also another point about the case study because the case study
Ah,
is quite long, right?
yes,
So like how
and
do you
very
approach the
detailed.
case study
Um,
question?
yeah, and the case study is also very detailed, right? There's like this the business requirements, this is the I think technical requirements, and then so on and so forth, right? And then there's an existing environment, so and things like that.
Yeah,
And that's why there are two approach. I think that might work. One is focus on the question and look for, like the
yeah,
clues from the case study. Otherwise, if you spend the other approach is I tried this, but it doesn't really click up for me. Wherein like I spent 5 minutes just understanding the whole case study first, right?
yeah.
And then try to answer individual questions, but then I still go back. I still have to go back.
Yeah, like because it's long. It's like there's no way anybody can actually memorize, and there's no. So I do the same. I jump straight into the question, and then just try to pick the relevant session where the question is relating to. Because sometimes some of the questions in case study you actually don't need to look at the case at all.
Yeah.
There are questions that you just look at the answers like yeah, surely it's that one. But there are times where you do need to look back. But
Yes.
yeah, the case study is just way too long. You probably don't need to spend like 15 minutes memorizing the different parts of case study. And that's another, I think, good
And
good
I
tip to
think
actually save time.
yeah, overall the exam these days is really good, right? Like it really tests your knowledge and kind of like scenario based kind of thing, right? Versus I still remember this like C sharp exam during 2008 2009 was like you have to memorize syntax and like oh this particular code does that and like right, like it's
Yeah,
not very practical, I would say. It's like a concept of memorization rather than
yeah,
like, hey, this is a case study. Hey, this is like, a
yeah.
scenario and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a bit of like you need to memorize the name of the function,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
very like there might be one or two
Oh, yeah,
questions
yeah.
like
Like,
that.
yeah, particularly some, Spark functions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Spark is KQL. It is part
Yeah.
of the challenge with fabrics. There's so many different components in
Exactly. Yeah.
there.
So many
So,
technologies, right? Yeah.
um,
one of my weakness in the exam was monitoring, particularly the warehouse monitoring. Like how do you monitor or like investigate SQL queries and like those type of things, right? Um, yeah, because that falls under more around DBA domain, right? Which again, coming from like a PE and DE or platform engineer and data engineer, my concept of monitoring is a bit different. Right, I'm looking at log analytics, or I'm looking at application logs versus DBAs, wherein the sys logs of like which SQL queries are slow and like this and that, right? So again, that the exam is a bit challenging because like you you have a very wide topic to cover. What?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's. I think we mentioned in one of the episodes that Fabric is almost tailored towards like a full stack data specialist.
Exactly, and
And
that's what this channel is about, man. Full stack developer, Fabric developer. It's like
yeah,
you're not just there to transform files or transform tables. When you become a Fabric developer, you do everything from left to right. It's like
yeah. I mean, it does sound very overwhelming. There's things to learn, but I would say it's actually you actually save a whole lot of time in meetings, like in the real world, right? If you knows and you can deliver end to end, you don't need to hand it over to another person who then
mm,
maybe only got 80% of the requirement, right? And then have to hand it on to another person after that. So I think yeah, it saves time. I think it's really good to have that broad knowledge and be able to actually deliver. It's very rewarding, in my opinion.
yeah,
So,
and
but yes,
probably
yeah,
probably one last thing I just want to mention about the Fabric exams, right? Again, DP-600 is focused for Power BI transitioning to Fabric, right? So it's very similar to the Power BI exam. Now, DP-700 is for Spark or data engineers, and it's very similar to the DP-203 exam, right?
yes,
But DP-203 is more Azure. Now this one's here. One thing that's still missing on an exam point of view is the whole concept of data governance and that type of thing, right? Purview, Fabric, data classification, and so on. There's a little bit of that in DP-700, but I think that's a separate beast and domain of its own, which I think should have its own category at some point. That's it for now. And again, we encourage everyone to take DP-700 exam, give it a go, but obviously do some learning and make sure you're using Fabric in your job or in your projects. Otherwise, it's not gonna be worth it, right? It's like, what's the point if you're not planning to use it anyway? So, yeah.
yeah, 100%. And like so, DP-600, DP-700, we've got both now. We have loads of industry experience over the past how many years. So, what's the next step?
Well, the next step is we're actually announcing that we're starting to, create some courses around the exam. But then here's this is gonna be a bit different, right? Like Dave and I will kind of like assist you in terms of like the DP-700 as a structure of the content, right? But the way we deliver it, the way we're going to explain concepts would be very anecdotal and like, we're gonna talk about, hey, maybe this is this and this is that, versus just purely, like, hey, this particular syntax does that, or like this is the approach, or when you're in this scenario, use that, right? Like we'll make it much more interesting as well in terms of the delivery. We'll have conversations, we'll explore as well, right? But I think leveraging from our MCT experience and like consulting, I think yeah, there's a really good market around this, and it's a really good time to do it as well.
100%. So that's something that will keep us both busy for a while this year. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. If you like the content, please like and subscribe us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye bye.